Faith and Goal is provided by Continental Diamond, Canterbury Park, JTR Roofing, and Faith Family Church. Here's the host of Faith and Goal, the voice of the Minnesota Vikings, Paul Allen.
There are parts of the Bible that address handling conflict with man. Could be friends, family, greedy bosses, co-workers. You've heard the biblical reference many times. Turn the other cheek. The book of Matthew starts the New Testament, which was written like 400 years after the Old Testament. And in Matthew, Jesus was preaching the Sermon on the Mount to his disciples and thousands who assembled from near and far. It reads, quote, "But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also," end quote. More on that later, and around deep stretch scripture time, Minnesotan David Backes is a master at turning the other cheek. 10 months ago, he wrapped up a glorious 15-year career in the NHL. He played in the Stanley Cup and the Olympics. He had to turn the other cheek when no longer could play in St. Louis, so it's off to Beantown. He turned the other cheek when beaten by his former team in a dramatic 7-game Stanley Cup Final. And David Backes turned the other cheek when traded for the first time in his career to a downtrodden, struggling Anaheim squad. After the 2021 season, his cheek became his back when he turned his back and walked away from all he has known. A professional hockey career that has come to an end. He dominated at Spring Lake Park High School, did the same for the Mankato Mavs, and the fascinating stories from the career of centerman David Backes is the focus of Faith and Goal 21. And by forechecking Faith, Faith and Goal starts right now.
Faith and Goal.
All right, man, let me guess. The weather out there in Southern California probably is unbelievable right now, correct?
Chilly by our standards. It's 65 for a high, so we've got the hooded sweatshirt on and the long pants. Kind of getting soft being here for too long.
David, what was SoCal like as the LA Rams were marching to the Super Bowl and eventually winning it in Inglewood, about 45 miles up the 405 from where you, your wife Kelly, and your kids live?
I could feel a little bit of support for the team starting, but I don't think there's a real solid base for the LA Rams in town. And obviously everyone, once they won the Super Bowl, you see a lot of the swag around, but there was not a ton of support in my mind for the LA Rams here in town, especially in Orange County. Maybe in LA it was a little bit different, but it's cool that they won and they're local, but I think they're still trying to build that fan base being back in town here.
So I know in 1998 you were at Spring Lake Park High School in 98, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So I mean, the Vikings get beat by the Falcons, and your high school David Back is focusing on hockey but liking local sports, and you just you obviously remember what the town was like then, just for the NFC title game. Much different than vast Southern California, right?
Much different. I think growing up a Vikings fan and following them, it was kind of our Sunday tradition. We'd go to church and then end up at one of the aunts, uncles, or our own home with the rest of the family coming over, watch the Vikings game, and my uncles and grandpa would be extremely passionate about every single play. And the years of growing up with Randy Mass and Randall Cunningham, and that was the year. And I remember I was at I don't know if it was a luncheon or a pregame meal or a postgame meal with my hockey team. We were watching the end of that game, and it was Gary Anderson to win it, and no such luck. And then it was heartbreak the other way. So bit scorn at that relationship with the Vikings. But if they get hot again and make some runs, I guess I would jump back on that bandwagon as well.
Faith and Goal.
Featuring David Backus. Those at the end of your career, David, those 2 seasons with Anaheim, is it easier to get focused heading to the rink when it's in the 80s and sunny with palm trees, or easier to get focused in the dead of like a Minnesota, Boston, or St. Louis winter?
Different. I would say, obviously I'm in a different walk of life with a wife and kids, so I've got other things going on that distract me otherwise. I think if I was a single guy here, it might be more difficult to just stay focused and not be worried about where I was going to try to go surfing later or what beach I was going to lay on. But to me, it's kind of, it levels you out, because no matter how your day went at the rink, and a lot of times, especially in professional sports, we bring work home to just be, even if you're in traffic, to say, I'm going to roll down the windows, the sun's shining on my face, and you know what? Crank up the tunes and forget kind of about the struggles in the professional life. And I think for me, that was really comforting and helped me maintain more level keel, later in my career, which is something I really had to work on, in my time in sports.
David is a Christian, quite public with his faith in God and his Christianity. Why is a relationship with God and belief in God, his son Jesus, and the Holy Spirit important to you, David?
Well, I don't know how much tape you got on this record to be recording, but I mean, that is, I guess, the essence of why I believe we were created, is to be in relationship with Jesus, to strive to be like him in his time that he was on the earth, to, be compassionate, to serve others, and to, serve because we were, and forgive because we were first forgiven. I think, without the context of faith in God and Jesus, I guess, what is your moral compass? Where do you find right and wrong? Where do you find, serenity and comfort knowing what you're put on this earth to do? And to me, all those things have come from a relationship with God and belief in Jesus, that I am forgiven of my sins. I am extremely far from perfect, and, acted in ways and done things in my daily thoughts that are not the way that they're supposed to be. And I'm working on those all the time and trying to, use my platform, use my gifts and all that I've been blessed with to try to help others, serve others, and make this world and grow his kingdom into a better place.
Amen with all that. Is in what ways, David, has your wife Kelly been vital to you during your terrific National Hockey League career?
Again, a loaded question. I think early in my time, she took care of the home front and made sure that I could focus on what I needed to do in the hockey world. And that was really pervasive throughout my whole career. But I think those demands grew once you have some kids. You're moved a couple times, even within St. Louis, we moved from out of the city, kind of closer into the action. And she really carries that burden while I'm able to go out and do what I want to do. I'd also say that she was instrumental and really guided our community outreach, and she's one of the most compassionate, empathetic people that I know. So when there's an opportunity to serve or to give back, she is not only encouraging me, but at times demanding that I get involved and be a part of it. And she doesn't get enough credit for pushing me along on some of those lines where I'm obviously the face of it, but the engine and the driving factor behind it is her and all the setup and preliminary work that she's doing. Then, I end up with the high five at the end. And really it should be the other way around, where, I did very little of the work and got most of the praise, and she did most of the work and got very little of the praise.
Well, that's so beautifully laid out. And now, if praise is important, now she's gotten it on Faith and Goal 21. And you laid it out beautifully, David Backus, who is in retirement. And just retirement. What are keys to finding peace less than a year after walking away from the game, the road trips with the guys, the adrenaline of competition, and silencing a crowd with a massive goal? Or has peace with that yet to be achieved?
I think that's a work in progress. There's how do you do that? I imagine that everyone's got their own kind of roadmap or how they did it, or trial and error. For me, last year, Kelly and I were on a Bible reading plan. So from January 1 till I think we finished it December 30th, so we could have New Year's Eve not having to read or not reading the end. So we finished it a day early, but I think that was really grounding for me. And, having read the whole Bible in 2021, to have just learned and pieced it all together and grown. When you're laying next to your wife in bed reading the Bible, there's certain growth that goes on there. And then having a discussion afterwards, whether you're picking it apart or talking about what it meant to you, referencing other sources and really getting context. It was really great growth for us. I would also say that there's certain challenges that I don't know if everyone faces, but for me, the idea of when I was playing, I would leave, I was probably gone 10 to 14 days a month on the road, and then I'd come home. And when you're gone, you obviously miss your spouse both ways. When you're not gone and you're seeing each other every day, there's not that longing to be together, and then you're together and it's like, oh, this is so exciting, we're able to be together for now, and then you're back on the road and rinse and repeat that way. At the same note, she was really good at running our home without me around, and she had systems and efficiencies that now I'm screwing them up all the time, and I'm in the way and here all the time, and I've got my ways of doing things or think that they should be done, and it's throwing wrench in the gears here, there, and everywhere. So there's some marital roles that are being redefined, and relationship that we kind of had our routine and a regimen for. We've almost been married 14 years. I played for 15, so we had that's all we know. So now that's kind of being redefined, and it isn't easy. It isn't perfect, and we're working on it. And I think, doing that together and knowing what we're based on and having a solid foundation certainly helps with, there's issues, there's arguments, we want to call them fights, but circling back and knowing that we have good intentions to try to work through it, find a solution, and try to be better the next time. So we're doing all of that in retirement, as well as, doing some other endeavors together. And when you get to be with your wife doing that, there's some special growth that happens there too.
Your honesty is moving me. And reading between the lines, and it's not like it's a lifetime problem. And I got no idea, what your relationship is like at the core, but what you described is a problem. And it's okay that it's a problem. God's will may not make sense at the time, but there's purpose. And from her standpoint, the way you represented her was just so beautiful, in that this home is her domain. And there were a lot of days and a lot of weeks with a lot of whiny kids and no David, because you're out there, you're out there, A, supporting the family, but B, doing what you love, and it's your career. And then we get to you, man. You're 10 months into retirement, and not having an outlet of going to the rink and being able to check somebody and being able to shove somebody and break a sweat and, get that burn and everything. You're pushing through that. And that's all legitimate. That's all honest and legitimate. And the fact that you openly recognize stuff like that, I think, is a beautiful characteristic, David.
Well, I appreciate that. I just think that through the professional sports world, I feel like we're, and part of it's people like you and in your industry, you guys make us sound so good and so perfect, and everything is like, these are exceptional humans that don't have the normal everyday struggle that, John Smith or Joe the plumber have. And to me, different lens and being real, I guess, that I struggle with a lot of the same things that every ordinary person struggles with. And our marriage is, it's not Instagram perfect where you just see the highlights. Like, we all have those issues. And if I can have a platform to say I'm a normal dude, I just, happen to have some really, decent gifts that God gave me, and I was able to put it together to have a good NHL career. Maybe someone else takes some solace in that and either reaches out for help or turns to what kind of grounds me and keeps me focused in my faith. So I'm willing to be open and honest and recognize that. And I just think like that to me is something that's beautiful, whether that's in a team concept or a relationship concept or just in a leadership quality that is magnetic to me as someone who's willing to be open and vulnerable and say, either I don't know, I don't have the answers, I'm imperfect, I am flawed, you know what, but let's do this together, let's figure this out. And to me, those are the types of qualities that I want to embrace and move forward with. So here I am. During
your career when you wore the C, that was for being a captain. And now you metaphorically and verbally are wearing the C as cohesive and collaboration and calm. That's the metaphorical C that we wear now. And just the way you laid that out, man, like when I talk to the Patalnis, Ryan or Grant, but specifically Grant of late. And I know you only overlapped with him one year, Gophers and Mavs. But that's one of the first things Grant told me about you is that he's just a born leader, and he's a born leader, and that's a quality that is obviously unto professional sports or business, but also the home and life. And Ryan Carter has said the same thing to me about you. And speaking of Ryan, let's go from now all the way back to your Mankato Mavs days with Coach Troy Jutting. Ryan Carter, what was it like playing with him?
Well, let me correct the record, first of all. I wear the A in our house. There's certainly, my wife has the C. I don't want to sound too cheesy, but there were a lot of times in my career where I would come home angry or just dejected, and she would be pushing me back onto the track that I needed to be on, where whatever, if I came home after a game and one of our guys was underperforming or I knew he needed to be straightened out, I would legit be like, tomorrow I'm fighting this guy in practice and like he needs to be straightened out, and this is just kind of my Neanderthal caveman way of going about it, or I'm just done with that guy, whatever. And through conversation, I would be suggested to and encouraged to take different actions and to open lines of communication. And truthfully, there were times when that happened and a guy would have something going on that was completely unrelated to hockey, share that with me. I could either help them get help or at least phrase that same sort of issue to other people with decision-making powers to lay off, or, you know what, grandma's sick and nobody else knows about it or is asking, and he's not going to just volunteer that, but through conversation you got to find that out, or kid's sick or troubles with the wife at home or whatever, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, he's got something else going on. It's obviously on his mind all the time. It's affecting performance a little bit, but maybe if we lay off him because he's got something else going on, like he'll sort it out. And when he's got it sorted out, he'll be a regular member of the group that can come focus and be awesome for us. And we'll have a stronger bond because we went through some stuff away from the ice. So to me, those types of situations, my wife certainly deserves a ton of credit for helping me see the humanity, because I am more objective and see black and white type of scenarios where she wants me to see whole picture. So back to your question that you posed about Ryan Carter. Ryan came in to Mankato. I think we graduated the same year, up for Mr. Hockey at the same time. He went and played one more year in the USHL after I did, and then came to Mankato. So we spent 2 years together, and I remember him being just a workhorse in the weight room. I think he played football in high school or maybe just before that, and was built just naturally thick and chiseled, and then on the ice could shoot it and had all the tools. And between him, Travis Moore, and myself, really felt like we had some ability on the team. And I think we were buddies. I would say more recently, Ryan and I really have formed a bond, based on family. When I'm in Minnesota, we do a Friday morning Bible study together, and just a lot more commonality. And his personality is so great. I think that's really blossomed through his time in the league, and now having his role that he does with Valley Sports, he's perfect for it. And he's always got that quick wit and that humor, keeps it light, and he's got so much hockey knowledge that now he's doing a phenomenal job.
You're David Backus, Faith and Goal 21. Your Mavs are the top college hockey team in the country. If they make it to the Frozen Four or the Frozen Four final in Boston, you have to go, right?
I mean, it's been circled on my calendar of it's in Boston. Familiar with the area. Let's make it out there and do it. I just think we're going to have to figure out logistics, but I think it's time. They certainly made a step last year with winning their first tournament game, getting to the Frozen Four the first time. A little bit of heartbreak to Duluth, but you see that program from when Ryan and I were there. I mean, we would get shellacked by the Gophers and just hoping to keep it, within the realm of not being embarrassed to show your face at class on Monday, to now the Gophers, maybe not. I mean, they're great games with the Gophers, and I don't think Mankato's built to blow anybody out with the skill level that, you had Vanek and just the juggernauts of the Gophers when we played them. But now I think the Mavericks are favored when they're playing the Gophers. Now, it's not just let's hope to be 500, what we were playing. Now it's, if we're not in the tournament, this is a year of failure. And now they're getting to, hey, we're not just getting to the tournament, we're doing damage. We're in the Frozen Four. And I think expectations, being the number one team in the nation, it's national championship game or bust. And it's a lot of pressure, especially in one-off games where goalie has a bad day, get a bad 5-minute major call against you, and the other team scores a couple on the power play, and you're climbing uphill. But with Dryden McKay and Nets and Mike Hastings behind the bench, and a lot of the talent that they have, Nathan Smith being on the Olympic team, all that to me bodes well for one exciting finish, and hoping to join them in Boston. And I don't know what kind of crazy outfit. Maybe I'll peel the old Mavericks jersey out of the archives and throw that thing back on.
Yeah, like a game-worn Grant Stevenson, Shane Joseph, Morin, Chad Lundeen, or David Backus. I think that'd be beautiful. And, with the NHL, man, I know you're very close with Vegas Golden Knight, Alex Pietrangelo, from your days with the Blues. What do you admire about him on and off the ice?
Well, Alex is a bit of I don't know if he's been diagnosed, but he's ADHD for sure, where sitting still and concentrating on one thing is difficult for him. But he's also got this, or maybe that's just my perception of him, but he's got this energy that just is seemingly endless, and he just wants to be on the move, and he's always got something on the go. And now he's got 4 kids, so I'm guessing he maybe gets tired every now and then, but his just ability to always have that, spirit that's ready to rock, and he's got endless, boundless, appetite for what's next. Let's go. And to me, at times, I'm like, man, just chill out. Can we not sit here and have a conversation? But I think it's an endearing quality. He's also a man of faith that through some struggles with fertility with his wife, it's ironic that they had miscarriages like a lot of, families do, and the heartache that goes from that. And then with a fertility doctor, they ended up with triplets all at once. And
Wow.
It was like, if that's not irony, like you're praying and hoping and all you want is kids. And it's like, God just says, like, here's 3, here you go. Like, here's your answered prayers. And to me, triplets, like, we have 2 6.5, one's 6.5, one's 4. And I love my kids, but the amount of work a baby brings in your house is unfathomable unless you've been through it. And to have triplets, I can't imagine. So they embraced it, and they, saw it as answered prayers. And then when the triplets were less than 2 years old, they were pregnant again, had one more baby. So now they've got 2 boys and 2 girls. And I think to see that sort of faith that, I saw some of it. I don't know all the behind the scenes, but to see that perseverance and that faith that then was answered, and now they've got this beautiful family. And, that's maybe the character side of it. I'm also envious and admire the Stanley Cup ring, the gold medal, things that I've got runner-up trophies for both of them. So he's very accomplished. He's been served well, and I handed over, or thought he would be the next captain of the Blues when I left St. Louis, and he was the first one to touch the Stanley Cup. But there's a reason I think that I thought so highly of him, and that shared experience and know where his heart was and his passion for his teammates and caring about them, and obviously served him well in the NHL and in life.
And speaking of the Blues, man, I mean, I just find the next couple of questions and topics fascinating, David, where you scored the 20,000th goal in Boston Bruins history in a game you lost to your former team, the St. Louis Blues. What do you remember about that game in 2016?
I remember being a nervous wreck. I think there's so much history. I played there for 10 years. I was a captain for 5, a lot of friends still on the team. And I was so jacked up for that game. I wanted to light the world on fire. And it was a point shot. I think I tipped it on the way in. And then as I pushed it through, I think it was Jake Allen in the net, my stick was broken in half. So I think it's probably 2 halves of a stick that they took it to the Hockey Hall of Fame for the 20,000th goal in Bruins history. But and I didn't know that whoever scored the next goal, typically guys in the room don't know things like that, was going to be the 20,000th goal. So certainly a special memory on a couple fronts, scoring against my old team, having that moment, but then to be such a milestone goal for the organization, duly special in that scenario.
Well, then the 2019 Stanley Cup Final, man. I mean, seriously, your Bruins versus the St. Louis Blues, the team that brought you into the league, five-year captain, 5-time captain, like you said. How weird and emotional was all of that, including losing the cup to them in 7 games?
Yeah, and I don't know if we're ready for a full therapy session on the record, but there was a lot of layers for me in that series, and I think, playing first time in the Stanley Cup Finals, and I had played for 13 years. It was my 13th season in the NHL, first time in the finals, and happens to be against my old team. And when I left St. Louis, I think my quote was like, if the team I'm not on is not winning the Stanley Cup, I hope it's the St. Louis Blues. I never thought it would be so, intimately relevant in that quote. But so you get to the finals against your old team, and then I played the first 4 games. It was a 2-2 series, and then I didn't play. I was a healthy scratch for games 5, 6, and 7,
Ooh.
and was just carried around kind of like luggage. So part of me in my brain thinks that it's a 2-2 series still when I left it. And, there's a certain helplessness of being a healthy scratch or being a scratch or being injured where your heart is in the game, but you have no influence on it whatsoever. Unless you're looking and finding some special tactical advantage, which you got to be pretty genius. And I don't know that by the time you're in the Stanley Cup final, you're going to find that. So I watched games 5, 6, and 7, went to St. Louis, down 3-2. We tie the series, and it's going back to Boston for game 7. And I remember going to that game. We had my family in town, my in-laws in town, and we're going to the game and just being like, hey, you know what, I'm either going to be Stanley Cup champion tonight, or I'm going to be dejected in a way that I've never been in my entire life. And I would include losing the gold medal game in Vancouver in that, just because of the rarity of making it to the Stanley Cup final, to be against your old team, all the work that goes into, winning 4-7 game series. So we got there, and I watched the first period from up in the press box, and after Pietrangelo scored to make it 2-0 late in that period, on a couple seconds left, he scored a goal. I went down underneath. I couldn't watch another second of it, and so I paced around in the bowels of the Garden for the next 2 periods, and just my heart was ripped out. And then to see the guys come in dejected, like part of that closure, not having it, is like you shake hands with guys at the end of a series because it was a great fought battle. When you're a healthy scratch, you know what? You might get a handshake from your dad when you get home, but like, there's no closure. I couldn't watch him raise the cup. It was like, I was probably in a depression for it was probably a couple, 3-4 months of just processing that, and a good week of like wanting to like just lay in bed. I'm also, now it's a couple years removed, and I'm like, it was a real struggle at the moment, but now looking back at it and getting perspective, like time, I think, gives everyone perspective of going, how blessed was I to make it to a Stanley Cup final? There's guys that have longer careers than me that don't, barely sniff past the first round in the finals. I would have loved to be in game 5, 6, and 7. I don't think, maybe I'm a difference maker in some of those games, maybe game 7, like for those not as intimately familiar with our game 7, like Boston dominated the first period. Jordan Binnington, the goalie for St. Louis, made saves that were unworldly, probably 3 of them. It should have been 3-0 before St. Louis even woke up, and he kept them in the game, and then they scored 2 late in the first period. So I'm thinking, like, would I have gone out, I don't know, get in his face, trip him, do something to, like, change the mojo, please. Big hit, something that tries to change the tide. Doesn't happen, and so the rest, we lose. So I think all of that wrapped in, that's my Stanley Cup final experience, but I do have perspective now of, like, happy for the city of St. Louis. Like, it was over 50 years of that franchise being in existence, and finally they got a cup in the city. I wish I was a part of it when I was there, but that's just the way it goes. And again, I've chosen to look at it as a great experience and have great perspective to make it, mold me into who I am.
Well, off that, not only off that, but when things are going, antithetical to what you just so beautifully, openly described, things are going well. How David, has prayer and your faith in the Bible, recognizing God's will is far greater than ours, how has that guided you?
It's been a really good pillar for me to, again, perspective on, like, rather than things happening to me, like things happening for me. Like, what am I going through this struggle for? What am I supposed to be learning? What kind of light can I shine into the world going through maybe a struggle? Like, obviously Paul's struggles in the Bible were much more significant, being in jail and not knowing where his next meal was coming from, and losing his sight late in his life. Like, to me, I didn't win a game or a series, or struggling with finding identity post-career, or bringing work home, disagreements with wife or kids not listening. Like, I understand perspective is not the same, but I also think as I see more life and experience more, I think the human condition is that whatever your struggles are, they're real and they're significant to you. And in those moments, you have to either you have a choice to lay down and to succumb to it, or to rise up and say, what is this for? I'm going to get through this, and I know that this is part of a bigger plan. And a lot of times it doesn't make sense, and it hurts so much that you don't maybe want to get through it. But there's a beautiful side on the other side of your struggle when that, when that answer comes, and that moment. I think, that is a faith that is strong and that perseveres versus the, person who's just riding the roller coaster up and down.
And God clearly has blessed you in so many ways, so abundantly, David Backus. It just had to be super special. 10 months ago, man, Cinco de Mayo 2021. You played your final NHL game, and it was in St. Louis, and they gave you a standing ovation. So how beautiful was that, man?
Yeah, that really solidified to me, I think, my feelings towards that city, that organization, that fan base. And the town is so great in St. Louis of embracing their professional athletes, that they appreciate their work. And I think the teams there really take on the persona and the character of that city, of hardworking, blue collar. We might not be the best team, but we're not going to be outworked. And I think that's something the fans appreciate, and something that really was instilled on me as a player and as a person in my time there. So, having that moment of, and we need to recognize that Ryan Getzlaf went to the then GM of the Ducks, Bob Murray, and they had no intentions of playing me in my last two series, because it was COVID, was 2 games in St. Louis, 2 games in Minnesota. And the Ducks didn't have any intentions to play me in any of those games. And Ryan Getzlaf went in there and says, Bob, he's playing in one of these games. Wow. If it takes me of going down with an injury and warm-ups and faking it, I don't care. He's playing in one of these games. And so that started the wheels in motion. I get told I'm going to play in the second one in St. Louis. So my parents drove down. The Blues gave us a suite to fill up with friends and family. And, then we have those moments in St. Louis, and then get to come to Minnesota and, have kind of a last hurrah in the Xcel Energy Center, where I don't want to say it was fitting. Would I love to play in one of those games? I think it might have been nice. I think the emotional drain of St. Louis was that was a nice cherry on top. But I also find some beauty in the fact that I was in the stands in the Xcel Energy Center. When I was in high school, the Wild came to town, and one of my classmates, his family got season tickets, and he would always take me. So that's kind of where the thought maybe of playing in the NHL really was seeded, was my friend taking me to the Xcel Energy Center and watching the Wild and seeing the big boys play. And then to have it kind of come full circle is I'm back in the stands watching games and really enjoying being a fan of the game. I felt like when I was playing, I typically was the matchup guy against the other team's best players, trying to either bully them or get them to think about something other than scoring goals. And I really had to diminish their abilities in my own brain to feel like I could compete against them. And then, to then appreciate their game or their ability. For the Wild, for probably a relevant audience, I would I would make Mikko Koivu like a tiny little, human in my brain of not being skilled, and like I'm going to bully him and he can't stick with me. And then getting to, appreciate his career. He's going to have his number retired shortly. If it didn't happen already, that he was one heck of a player. And really, I didn't like to play against him, but I had to tell myself that he was less of a player. And now I get to sit back as a fan and be like, he was one heck of a player. Sidney Crosby is incredible what he does. Even a guy like Jonathan Toews, who I battle with all the time, being like, you know what, pretty good. But I could never tell myself that when I was playing, because I wanted, or I needed that mental competitive edge of saying, this guy's not going to get the best of me, and here's why when I played.
I love that. I love Ryan Getzlaf. Never met him. Career Anaheimer. I mean, right at the end has to be. He's like 36, 37, 38. But, man, I just wish that Anaheim was at the X this year so I could, use my media pass and get down there and just shake Ryan Getzlaf's hand and say, we don't know each other, but, we both know David Backes, and he told me the story. And God bless you, man. I mean, what a phenomenal story that was. Lastly, Athletes for Animals. What's the purpose of the charity? And in 2013, what led you and your wife, Kelly, to champion the cause?
Well, Athletes for Animals kind of started officially in 2013, but Kelly and I had been volunteering at animal shelters since our early days in Mankato. We were living in a college scenario, renting an apartment or separately, but neither of us could have animals in there, nor would have been responsible to do. So we'd volunteer at the animal shelter. Well, that translated into doing the same when we got to St. Louis and really connecting with the community. And I mean, we started out with scooping litter boxes and walking dogs and cleaning kennels. And it just, then we'd make appearances at fundraisers and talking with executive directors in some of the organizations. They said, we love that you volunteer. We love that you're willing to cut us a check or, donate whatever we're asking for. But your biggest impact on our organization is you lending your voice to us. And we said, how can we leverage not only our own voice, but our connections in the professional sports world with a lot of these players, male and female, that reach out to us and say, hey, I know you're doing this. How did you do it? What can you tell me? Or we want to start our own thing. So we said, let's take that as our objective, to leverage our professional athlete connections to further this cause. So Athletes for Animals was founded, and we started doing that. We'd have some players that would reach out to us and say, hey, we want to help animals, don't have a ton of time, but we don't know where to donate. We could donate to XYZ shelter, but don't know if that's the best way to use it. We'll donate to Athletes for Animals, and then we have a semi-annual grant cycle that we go through close to 100 applications twice a year to find out where those funds go most efficiently, that are forward-thinking, that combat the mistreatment or overpopulation of domestic pets. And then the second way is we had other guys say, whether they're going to write our check or not, hey, we're interested in getting involved. How can we do this? And from our experiences, we were able to really expedite the learning curve or broker the relationship with them and an organization so that they knew what was expected of them. The organization knew what they were able to, use the athlete for. And that created a lot of great connections. And I think animal rescue is one of those things where you experience it once or you hear the stories. Unless your heart is made of stone, it's addictive to just want to do more and help more. And so we found all those things. And now it's 2022 and we're, I'm retired and doing the same thing of helping other athletes get involved. And then we still do fundraisers or have donations at athletesforanimals.org that, if you're not sure where to best use your money, we will be great stewards of that to get it back into the community to have a huge impact on animal welfare.
David, I met you through Ryan Carter, and from that time I met you in the studio here at KFAN. I've always admired you. I've always admired your faith, and after the conversation today, my level of admiration for you has greatly increased because of your honesty, which is so rare this day and age, specifically with men, and your openness with your faith. And admiration is now joined by inspiration. And I can't thank you enough for the chat. Let's stay in touch. I'll be calling you soon, okay?
Thank you for your time and using your platform to grow the kingdom and to tell the stories. And, I appreciate getting to know you, and hopefully this is just the beginning.
God bless you, buddy. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
David Backus lost the Stanley Cup in the 7th game to the team with whom he spent a decade. And by the way, when he started becoming a healthy scratch, if you missed it, 4 games into the Stanley Cup Final against the St. Louis Blues, it was so emotional and personal and saddened him so badly that he concedes on Faith and Goal 21. He battled extreme depression for 2, 3, 4 months. But David believes in the Bible and the inspired word of God. There's peace in them our hills if one loses the foolish pride and for a second and gives it a chance. God doesn't teach turning the other cheek so the world can walk on you and you respond sans rebuke. The message is to forgive, pray for your enemies, and let God handle the retaliation. God has the sole power to punish people who sin, not us. In fact, in the Old Testament book of Proverbs, which teaches some of the most telling, practical, and beautiful messages in the greatest story ever told, the Bible, Proverbs chapter 20, verse 22 teaches, "Do not say, 'I'll pay you back for this wrong.' Wait for the Lord, and he will avenge you." Deep stretch scripture. Deep stretch scripture, though. The book of Genesis is the very first book of the entire Bible. Through the divine spirit of God, Moses tells a wonderful story of a man named Joseph. It's chapter 37, Genesis, and part of the story goes like this. Joseph was sold into slavery by his own brothers. They were jealous of him and wanted him gone. Joseph spent many years in Egypt when he was enslaved and imprisoned, but also experienced God's favor. When a famine hit the land, Joseph was reunited with his brothers. He could have had them imprisoned or killed, but his response was neither. Genesis chapter 50, verse 21 says, quote, "So then don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children." And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them being his brothers. His brothers, man, jealousy basically left him for dead. Decades later, they needed him. And because he turned the other cheek, which is a divine trait, he came through and loved them. The Bible stories are so real and powerful and such wonderful teachings regarding roots to living in the here and now. Pray to God like, "Heavenly Father, if your will permits, please ease my heart with the way I feel about so-and-so and for the ability to turn the other cheek and smile when I see or cohabitate with so-and-so. Unleash all the peace you have put in my heart so I can be a more upstanding person when it comes to ego and conflict. Guide me to a higher level of patience and the ability to forgive and love while defending myself in representation of you. I love you, Father. Amen." Simple prayer. Thanks for the time, David Backus. Thanks for the help, Eric Nordquist and AJ Mansour. And thanks iHeartMedia and KFAN Radio for permitting me this platform to share my heart and hopefully guide people to the Bible, a more selfless way to live, and lessons that continue to stand the test of time. I'm Paul Allen. That's Faith in Goal 21. Thanks for listening.